What if the life you keep postponing isn't waiting for more time? What if it's waiting for less noise? In the mountains of Nagano, one family has forged swords by hand for over 9 centuries. Not for war anymore, for practice. Researchers studying multi-generational craftsmen noticed something strange. The ones who lasted decades in their craft were rarely the most gifted at the start. They were the ones who could repeat one motion, the same motion for years, without needing it to turn into something bigger. Western culture took an idea like this and turned it into a hustle quote. Master your craft. 10,000 hours. A checklist with a deadline. And in turning it into a slogan, something essential was lost. Mastery was never about the finish line. It was about how you stood inside the long, boring middle of the work. This is the story of two strangers in Denver, Colorado, and the 4 centuries-old ideas that found them across 4 Saturdays. If you'd rather sit with one idea than skim 10, stay. This video wasn't built for skimming. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Two people. One quiet, static. Ethan Cole was 27. He worked in social media analytics, had 4 half-finished online courses, and a habit of re-watching the same morning routine videos, hoping one of them would finally take. He wasn't lazy. He was saturated, full of frameworks, empty of practice. He could explain 7 productivity systems and had not finished a single thing that mattered to him in 2 years. Across the city, Marcus Webb was 46, a structural engineer, married 18 years, father of 2 teenagers who no longer needed tucking in. He had built a career people respected, and a garage workbench he hadn't touched since his oldest was in middle school. He used to restore old radios. Marcus had done everything correctly. That was the problem. He had hit every milestone and arrived at 46, wondering quietly, in the car, in the shower, why correctness didn't feel like anything. Neither man knew the other existed. Both saw the same flyer for a 4-week evening workshop called The Way, taught by a retired calligraphy teacher. Ethan found it shared in a forum thread with one comment, "Not a course, a correction." Marcus's daughter sent it to him with 3 words, "This feels like you." Neither could explain why they signed up. They just did. Pause here. If you recognized Ethan in the saturation, or Marcus in the quiet ache of a life built correctly, but felt distantly, you are not behind. Most people don't suffer from a lack of information. They suffer from too much of it, and too little silence to hear what's actually theirs. Chapter 2. First lesson. Mushin, the mind without obstruction. The workshop was held in a converted print shop near the river. Folding chairs, no slides, a low table, and a man named Kenji Arai, 67, born in Kanazawa, hands permanently stained from decades of ink. He didn't introduce himself. He asked a question. When was the last time your mind was quiet and you didn't try to make it useful? Silence. Ethan stared at his notebook. Marcus stared at the floor. There's a word, Kenji said, Mushin. People translate it as no mind, and then they ruin it by trying to achieve it like a goal. Mushin isn't emptiness you reach. It's the noise you stop adding. He held up a brush. A swordsman doesn't think about the cut. The thinking already happened years earlier in practice. In the moment there is only the cut. He set the brush down. Your mind is so busy narrating your life that you've stopped living the parts that don't need narration. He gave them an assignment. Find 3 moments from the past week where time passed and you weren't tracking it, measuring it, or turning it into content for later. Just 3 moments where you were simply there. Ethan struggled. Then he found one. 20 minutes spent rewriting a friend's wedding speech, just for the satisfaction of getting a sentence right. Marcus found his at the workbench, sanding a radio cabinet he hadn't planned to touch that night. Neither moment had built anything. Neither moment had an audience. That was exactly the point. This is the exercise for you too. Get real paper. Write down 3 moments this week where you were present without trying to be productive about it. Keep that paper. You'll need it again. Chapter 3. Second lesson. Shuhari. The 3 stages of the way. The second Saturday, Kenji brought a stack of his own early calligraphy. Clumsy, uneven strokes from 40 years ago. Shu, he said, means to obey the form exactly without deviation, even when you don't understand why. Ha means to break from the form once you've earned the right. Ri means to forget the form completely and simply move. He let that settle. Your culture skips straight to Ri. You want to skip the obedience and the breaking and arrive at effortless mastery on day 1. So you quit at Shu every time, mistaking the discomfort of repetition for proof you chose the wrong path. Marcus thought about the radios, how he used to take them apart and reassemble them dozens of times before he understood why each part mattered. He had been good at Shu once. He had simply stopped staying anywhere long enough to need it. The question isn't which path is correct, Kenji said. It's which repetition you're willing to stay inside of for years, with no guarantee it ever becomes Rai. Afterward, in the parking lot, Marcus told Ethan about the radios. Ethan admitted he'd never stayed with anything past the point of it feeling slow. Slow, Marcus said, is just the part nobody films. Chapter 4. Third lesson. Makoto, sincerity toward what's actually yours. Week 3. Kenji asked them to name a major decision from the last decade, then asked, did that decision come from something you examined or something you inherited and never questioned? Makoto, he said, is usually translated as sincerity, but it means something closer to act from what is true in you, not from what is expected of you. He looked around the room. Most people are sincerely loyal to someone else's definition of a good life. Ethan admitted quietly that he'd chosen analytics because his older brother had said data was the safe bet. He had never once asked if it was his bet. Marcus said almost nothing that night, but on the drive home he understood that he'd treated the radios as a hobby to apologize for instead of a craft to protect, because his father had once called tinkering a waste of good hours. This is your pause too. Write 5 values that actually run your daily decisions, not the ones you admire from a distance. Beside each, write inherited or chosen. The ratio is an honest snapshot of whose life you're actually living. Chapter 5. Fourth lesson. Kaizen, the relentless small improvement. On the final Saturday, Kenji set down a small ceramic dish, cracked once and repaired with a visible gold seam. Kintsugi, he said. Not today's lesson, but keep it in mind. What broke and was mended carefully is not lesser. Often it's the part people remember. Then, Kaizen, continuous, unglamorous improvement applied to one thing every day without ceremony. The question isn't what is my purpose, Kenji said. It's what am I doing right now, and am I doing it slightly better than yesterday? He asked them to look again at their 3 moments from week 1. The pattern, he said, had been visible from the start. They just hadn't trusted it because it was small. Ethan's pattern was language, the sentence he fixed for free, the speech he couldn't stop refining. Marcus's was his hands on something broken, made whole again slowly. Kenji closed with something his teacher once told him. The tree does not grow faster because you're watching it. It grows anyway. Chapter 6. What came after? Ethan didn't quit his job or launch anything. He started a private document where he rewrote 1 paragraph a day, just for the sentence-level pleasure of it. 3 months later, he had 40 pages he hadn't shown anyone, and he didn't need to. Marcus took the radios off the shelf, not as a project with a deadline, but as the thing he did on Sunday afternoons. His wife noticed before he said anything. When she finally asked what had changed, he said, "I stopped waiting for it to make sense to anyone but me." Mushin asked them to stop narrating long enough to notice what already held their attention. Shuhari asked them to stay inside the slow, obedient repetition instead of abandoning it for the next promising thing. Makoto asked them to separate what they inherited from what they actually chose. Kaizen asked for one small, honest improvement, repeated, with no audience required. Do you still have your paper from week 1? Look at it again. What's written there isn't the beginning of a new life. It's the beginning of paying attention to the one you already have. If this found you at the right moment, subscribe. There's a video linked right now about the one habit most people quietly abandon by day 12, and why staying past that point changes everything. Thank you for staying for the whole thing. Walk the way. Mind the cut. Until next time.